and they have affiliate offices in New York, Detroit, Washington, Atlanta, and Tampa. So as you can note from the program, the theme is Turning the Tide Together, addressing HIV/AIDS and health disparities in Black communities. I am Ken Lazarus, and I am with the Johnson C. Smith Theological Seminary here at the Interdenominational Theological Center. So on behalf of our President Dean, Paul T. Roberts, and the President of ITC, Dr. Ronald E. Peters, we want to welcome you to our chapel here. And we know where two or three are gathered, the Father, Mother, Creator, God that I serve will be in the midst. And I just want to encourage us to do all that we can do to turn this tide. I want to introduce Aquarius Gilmer, who's come to us from New York. He's the National Affiliate Coordinator, and he will bring us opening remarks and then introduce us to our local sister who leads our opportunity here in Atlanta, Brother Gilmer.
Good evening and welcome again. I am Aquarius Gilmer, the National Affiliate Services Coordinator from the National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS. And on behalf of C. Virginia Fields, our President and CEO, and the Reverend Dr. Calvin O. Butts III, we would like to welcome you to this event. This town hall meeting is crucial in that we're trying to really bring the community the information which has been disseminated from various conferences within the last quarter of this, or last about 4 or 5 months of this year. And we thought it important to inform the community about the new policies and the new sciences which will affect the new realities in which members of our community must live with. And so with that said, I'm going to turn the mic over to our Affiliate Services Coordinator for the BLCA of Atlanta, Reverend Vanessa Sharp, who will give you further introductions and welcome on behalf of Dr. Raphael G. Warnock, the chair of this affiliate.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is a pleasure to be here on the ITC campus and to bring awareness as we are turning the tide together, addressing HIV and AIDS and health disparities in our Black community. We chose ITC as a place to bring information, new information, because it is essential for our communities at large. It is indicated in percentages that the Black community is being affected with HIV and AIDS more than any other community at large in the United States. And we are trying to get our churches and our faith communities involved and to come to the forefront of awareness, education, and to help spread the word of the improvements, the updates, and just to know the facts of what is going on with HIV and AIDS. President Obama is seeking for the Black community and the churches particularly to come to the forefront in this fight, in this plight of HIV and AIDS, which has been an epidemic for quite some time. And the faces of AIDS has changed from 20 years ago, and we need to know the facts. It is a fact that the HIV strategy that has been promoted by President Obama indicates that we will have a 0 infection rate by the year 2015. How? By getting the information out to our communities so that we know the very recent information, the current information that is at our disposal so that we can get the word out and we can know our status. Thank you very much, and we look forward to conversation and new science, new policies, and new realities in this hour that we have together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And now we get to hear from the other half of the Cephas household, Minister Clifford Cephas will give us a selection before we proceed into the first discussion around new science, new policies, and new realities. Brother Cephas. Thank you, Minister Cephas. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our first panel. And as you can imagine, they may be stuck in the throes of traffic or any number of other things, but we are happy to have with us here today, and I'm going to welcome him to the panel desk here. Dr. Ruben Gamunde, who's the Associate Director of Community Medical Affairs for Gilead Sciences. Because we have such a wonderful opportunity to discuss these issues, we are going to do this. We had scheduled to have our panelists do their presentations. By way of housekeeping, we have a mic here to my right. Anyone that has a question as the panel goes on, feel free to come to the mic. You will be duly and respectively acknowledged, because this dialogue is really about sharing information and moving forward. Regrettably, Madeline Sutton could not be with us this evening. She was going to talk around HIV treatment as prevention. I am going to share just a limited bit of my knowledge regarding this. As a minister, we're often called to be ye ever so ready, so we are standing in that gap today. I have been living with AIDS myself for 24 years. So oftentimes when I make this disclosure, publicly or privately, people want to correct me. They want to say, don't you mean HIV? And to some of them that know me, I go, well, you know, do I look intelligent? Do I look like I put my clothes on right? I mean, I have been living with AIDS. And certainly, we're preaching to the choir today. I know many of you are busy in the work, and so we understand the clinical diagnoses and the way that we arrive at that. My personal story began in the 80s with a test that was a T-cell count of 165, even before 1992 when the CDC did the delineation. So yes, I've been living with AIDS. And so when I think about treatment as prevention, you know, there's a lot of debate around this particular topic. So we've been doing studies. In the University of Washington study involving heterosexual couples in which one partner had HIV and the other did not, transmission was reduced by 73% compared with the placebo when the uninfected partner took the antiretroviral drugs. I don't know whether that's surprising or not. Well, those are the results of the study. We juxtapose that to a Botswana study, which involved healthy, sexually active men and women taking ARVs, where the risk of an HIV infection was reduced by 63%. So, what I want to do is ask the panelists. I know Brother Reggie is in the audience, Dr. McCoy is in the audience, Nina is in the audience. Those of you who may not be directly engaged in the HIV work, do you understand this concept, treatment as prevention? I don't want to make an assumption that everyone understands this new terminology. So, let me put my glasses on. This is going to be just like at home, and the videographer can edit it later if necessary. Does everyone in the audience understand treatment as prevention?
No.
No. Okay. So, very good. Brother Dr. Ruben to my right is going to share a little bit, and we want to welcome our good sister Bernice Frazier, who is the Executive Director of the Southern Christian Leadership Foundation Act Against AIDS Leadership Initiative, and we want to thank her for making her way here this afternoon. So, Brother Ruben, I want you to share a little bit.
Okay.
And we do have some other experts in the audience. So, Brother Reggie.
I'd like to stand.
Yes.
So, sorry if you have to move the camera. So, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Ruben. I work for a pharmaceutical company that is called Gilead Sciences. Gilead is a pharmaceutical company that makes some of the medications that people with HIV are taking today. So I just want to, full disclosure. he was talking about something that we call treatment as prevention. There's actually a lot of confusion in the community about different acronyms and what different things mean. So when I'm talking about this topic, I usually talk about three things that are going on right now. One that is called treatment as prevention, and sometimes you will see it abbreviated as TASP. Then there's something else that is called PEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis. And then there's something else that is called PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis. So there's three things that involve using anti-HIV medications, but in some cases, the person that is taking the anti-HIV medications is a person living with HIV, and in some other cases, the person taking HIV medications is actually a person that is HIV negative to prevent infection from happening. So are you following me so far? Any questions or comments about that? So, the treatment as prevention, if we wanted to add words to explain that better, basically means the treatment of someone that is HIV positive that has all the benefits for the person that is HIV positive that the medications can give that person, like living longer, having a healthier life. And it also has a secondary benefit, which is decreasing the possibility of that person passing HIV to a person that is HIV negative. Do you understand that concept? So actually we have known about that for a very long time, but in a different context. The idea is that if a person that is living with HIV has an undetectable level of HIV, do you guys know what undetectable level of HIV means? Yes, no? Yes. So, okay, so some people do, some people don't. So let's clarify the topic then. If I am living with HIV, there's a couple of ways in which you can measure, a doctor can measure, how that person is doing. You want to measure how much virus, how much infection that person has, and that test is called viral load test. And you want to measure how healthy the immune system is. So you may measure CD4 cells or T cells that are, basically part of the white cells in the immune system. So the higher the viral load, so the more virus a person has in the body, the more likely that that person, will progress to an AIDS diagnosis faster. What you want to do with anti-HIV medications is control HIV from making copies of itself. And when you are able to control that, then there's a very small amount of HIV in the body, and we call it undetectable because we cannot measure it, because the test that we use to measure it is not that great. So if there's less than 50 copies of HIV, we call it undetectable. Are you following me so far? Yes. So if a person is living with HIV, starts taking anti-HIV medications, one of the ways that you measure that the medication is working and that the person is being successful on treatment is by measuring viral load. And if the viral load gets to undetectable, that's basically telling you the medications are working. And usually that means two things. The medications are working because the medications are good, are effective, are potent against the virus, but it also means that the person is taking the meds every day. So sometimes, there's confusion and people think that when you say undetectable, that may mean that the person doesn't have the virus in the body anymore, but that's not the case. The virus is still there, it's just in an amount that you can't measure very well. And I think that was probably one of the biggest, media mistakes that happened years ago when, Magic Johnson went to an undetectable level of HIV and Cookie said that he was cured. she didn't understand the concept because probably the doctor didn't explain it very well. But that's basically why some people have this, sort of this misconception or misunderstanding that undetectable means no virus. And undetectable means a small amount of virus, which is very good for the person living with HIV because less is better in this situation, okay? So,
Ruben,
yes.
I want to ask you a question. So recently, while we were at the International AIDS Conference this summer, either just before or during, there was an approval of one of your products,
Yes.
Truvada.
I'll talk about that.
And so, am I too early for you to talk about it?
A little bit. Because
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that people understand sort of the different things that have been studied using anti-HIV medications to try to not only help people living with HIV, but also try to prevent new infections.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just go step by step and then get to that.
Very good. Okay.
All right. So one of the things that I think it's important in sort of the history of HIV treatment is that we got to this point that we have medications that are very effective, that are very potent, that allow people with HIV to live longer, to be as old as they would have been if they would have never gotten infected, right? And that has a secondary benefit, which is preventing transmission of HIV when the number of people that are undetectable goes up. Okay, so if everybody that is HIV positive in the US knew that he or she was positive, was on care, was on treatment, chances are that we will see less infections happening on a yearly basis. Okay, so that is what is called treatment as prevention. And then we have, what you are asking, which is also using anti-HIV medications. But in this particular case, in something that is called PEP or PrEP, there are two different things. The person that is taking the medication is not the person living with HIV, but it's actually a person that is HIV negative in order to try to prevent infection from happening to begin with, okay? So PEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis, is something that has been done for many years, and basically post-exposure prophylaxis means that a person that is HIV negative starts taking medications, some of the same medications that people with HIV take, after they have become exposed to HIV, okay? And they only take medication for a month. That's usually done in cases of a doctor, a nurse, a fireman, someone working in the health field that maybe becomes in contact with blood or any other fluids from, like, some people that may be working with a nurse or a doctor that is doing a surgery or something like that and becomes in contact with blood. It's done in situations of rape and things like that, where you don't know if the person that did that is HIV positive. So you may want to prevent HIV infection just by doing post-exposure prophylaxis. And then also it's done in situations in which a person had unprotected sex with someone that they suspect or that they know or that they think that there's a chance that they may be positive, or even if they don't know, but they just had an episode of unprotected sex. And because they know about HIV, they decide to go to the doctor and request post-exposure prophylaxis. So the key about post-exposure prophylaxis is that the medication needs to be started within 72 hours of the potential exposure. So that has been done for many years. Now the new thing is called pre-exposure prophylaxis. So the difference between pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis is that we are talking about someone that is at very high risk for HIV infection, that maybe lives in an area where there's high prevalence of HIV, and that basically means in an area where there's a lot of people living with HIV, or they belong to some social network that is of high prevalence. So, maybe people are connected because they live in the same geographical area, or maybe they are connected because of something different, but they are within, sort of a network that can be geographic or it can be a social network. So the difference then between PEP and PrEP is that PrEP, a person that is identified as a high risk for acquiring HIV, in consultation with the doctor, where you evaluate the risk, you talk about why this person is not able to use condoms. Is it because they don't know how to use condoms? Is it because of a power issue with whoever they are in a relationship with? I mean, there could be millions of reasons. So you know that maybe this person has been coming to you for an HIV test, and it's just a matter of time that test may be positive in the future because of the, high-risk activities that this person is engaging and doesn't change. So what has been studied is the use of Truvada, which is a medication that Gilead makes, which is the same medication that is taken in combination with others by people with HIV, but it has been studied for pre-exposure prophylaxis. So there were 2 studies that actually led to the approval of the medication. One was done in men who have sex with men, and the other study was done in heterosexual serodiscordant couples. So heterosexual serodiscordant couples means couples that are heterosexual, a man and a woman, and serodiscordant means that one of the individuals, one of the members of that couple is HIV positive and the other one is HIV negative. So that study actually showed, and basically what they did is that they separated the couples. So you have half of the couples took Truvada, which is the medication that is given to people that are HIV positive. But in this particular situation, the person taking Truvada wasn't the HIV positive partner in that couple. It was actually the HIV negative partner in the couple. And then on the other set of couples, the person that was negative was taking a placebo, so like a sugar pill. And basically the study had to be stopped because they were able to demonstrate that Truvada was able to prevent those people from becoming infected. The people taking it were the negative, so it preventing those individuals from becoming infected, even though they engage in unprotected sex with their partners that were HIV positive. So is Truvada 100% effective in reducing the possibility of someone becoming infected? No, it's not. And it's very far from being 100% effective. So whenever you hear talks like this in the community, or whenever you work with a healthcare provider, they will probably give people information about PrEP or the use of anti-HIV medications to prevent infection, but in the context also of condom use. And so the recommendation is that if someone is interested in using an anti-HIV medication to prevent HIV infection from happening, it's not just, oh, here's the prescription, take the pill, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be in conjunction with a lot of education about how to use condoms, how to access condoms, how to change behavior, and so on and so forth. So I talk a lot now, so interrupt me and just ask me questions or tell me to shut up.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yes.
So from a scientific and a medical lens, what do you see as the barriers of care to people living with HIV/AIDS? With the given statistics of those who are not retained in care, adhering to medications, and who potentially have really high viral loads, which makes their networks very infectious, if you will. So what are some barriers to care? And I know that you laid out, second question is, I know you just laid out one or several ways in which to encourage those who will be participants of PrEP. So how we're going to make sure that those persons are actually going to adhere as well.
Right, and I'm not sure if I can give like a great smart answer, because what you're bringing up is the fact that we have been dealing with this issue for many, many years, and we haven't really discovered what is the best way to approach the situation that we have in the United States, and we don't know exactly what's the best way to approach decreasing the number of people that become infected on a yearly basis. So, and there's the Obama National HIV/AIDS strategy that is an attempt at doing that, but it's not that easy to implement, and in some places it's easier than some others, because you need a lot of buy-in from the community, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of resources. But just sort of to summarize what's going on in the US, we have about 1.2 million people living with HIV in the United States. But only 75% of those people know that they are HIV positive. So we have more than 250,000 of people living in the US that they may be passing the infection to others without even knowing that they're HIV positive themselves, okay? Of the people that are HIV positive, that 750,000, and I'm just like sort of, rounding numbers up or down, about 500,000 are in care, which means that they're going to see a doctor. So that is telling you that already half of the people living with HIV are not in care, are not seeing a doctor for HIV. You have the 250,000 that don't even know that they're positive, and the other 250,000 that maybe once they got tested, they got the results, but they never did anything else about it. Of the people that are in care, about maybe 400,000 or something like that are taking anti-HIV medications, and of those, like less than half or about half have an undetectable level of HIV, have an undetectable viral load. So if you connect what I'm telling you now with what I told you a couple of minutes earlier, that if a person that is HIV positive is taking anti-HIV medications, has an undetectable level of HIV, is less likely to transmit HIV to someone that is negative, even if they don't use condoms. In the United States, of the 1.2 million people living with HIV, only 200,000 have an undetectable level of HIV. So the other million people living with HIV belong to some other category. Either they are on treatment, but the viral load is not undetectable, or they're not on treatment, or they don't even know that they're HIV positive. Okay, so in order to sort of like stop the epidemic eventually, we need to intervene in every single step in that is called the Gardner's cascade. The person that describes this is a researcher that is called Gardner, so they call it the Gardner's cascade because it goes down from 1.2 to 200. It's like a cascade. So you have to intervene at every single level. So how do you find out? How do you find the people that are positive? And there's a lot of different ways. Some are easier than others. You can have town halls like this and do testing, and that yet maybe you can get some people to agree to get tested. What needs to happen really is what the CDC recommends, is that HIV testing becomes routine testing, where when you go to the doctor, they measure your blood pressure, your sugar, your whatever, and also they do an HIV test. And that's how you're going to find, people that are positive that may not even perceive to be at risk themselves. And then you have to intervene at every other, step of that cascade. You want to make sure that if a person is HIV positive, that they get connected to a doctor, but not just any doctor, someone that specializes in HIV. Then you have to provide support so that if they are going to be taking anti-HIV medications, they need support from the healthcare provider, friends and family, or psychologists or psychotherapists, or whatever it is. And then you have to help people along the way to make sure that once they are successful on treatment and are adherent, that they will be able to continue being adherent, and then they will be there to celebrate their 100th birthday.
Thank you, Ruben. Oh. Yes, I was just going to say,
I spoke more than I should have.
Before we transition to Bernice, I wanted to make sure those persons in the audience who said that they did not have an understanding of treatment as prevention, what's your, do you have a better feel for what that is now? Those of you who said no.
Yes.
Because we want to make sure that we're sharing the information in a way that you are receiving it. These are experts, you have their names, you can Google them. I'm here on the campus. We want to make sure that no one leaves in a state of misunderstanding. So, I know I heard some no's. I just want to give you that opportunity if you want some more clarification. But go ahead, Bernice, with your question.
Okay, I understand.
Mike, can I get you the mic?
And then we'll take your question, Bernice. Thank you.
I do understand PrEP, but my question is that going to, I'm HIV negative, my husband is HIV positive, we're a serial discord couple. My fear is that I have remained negative for 27 years based on protecting me. So now you introduce Truvada, and there's no real, it's not 100% guaranteed to me. What I've been doing has been 100% for me.
Right, exactly. And I think that Truvada is not for everybody that is HIV negative to prevent HIV infection. It's one additional tool in this toolbox of prevention strategies, whether it's condoms or behavioral intervention like having less sexual partners and things like that. So if you think about who is at high risk, it's not a person that is HIV negative, period. A person that is at high risk for HIV is the person that shares with the provider when they come for an HIV test or something else. I've been having sex with 20 partners. Sometimes I use condoms, sometimes I don't because I don't like them or because I can't find them, and I really hate condoms. That's an example, okay? There's probably millions of examples. It could be a sexual worker, a sex worker that says, you know what, I tried, but it's either no condoms or I don't have money to pay rent. It could be a situation in which you have, a stereodiscordant couple like yourself, but there's a relationship in which there's power struggles and the man doesn't want to use condoms, and the woman is in a position where she is afraid to confront him, and this is something that she could do without him knowing. So there's a lot of different examples, but that's a great question because I don't want people to leave thinking, Truvada, everybody that is negative we should put Truvada on the water supply. Nobody's saying anything like that. It's basically saying it's an additional tool that may be good or appropriate for some people and not forever, maybe for some time. Maybe someone is in a relationship where they don't use condoms, and then 6 months from now, that person is no longer in that relationship and doesn't need it anymore. So it's not something that is being proposed as a solution, number one, but it's a tool that it could be part of the solution.
See, my fear is like Cookie gave some misinformation, and the information about Truvada does not need to get out that it is part of a cure for people who are negative, because you run the risk of more people getting infected because we only hear what we want to hear.
Absolutely, and so that's why, I hear people say, if I'm going to be doing Truvada, oh, perfect, then I don't have to worry about using condoms or this like that. No, that's not the case. It's not 100% effective, number one. So nothing is going to guarantee that you're not going to become infected. And number two, in the study was studied in conjunction with, the researchers working with these serodiscordant couples or with men who have sex with men, in counseling them, giving them condoms, encouraging condom use, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So it has to be done well, and not just, it's never going to be like over the counter, where people
Okay.
just buy
Thank you.
without.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make a comment that turns into a question if the doctor can explain it a little bit more. When I was at the United States AIDS Conference, one of the things that was explained in several workshops that we were in was that PrEP was not automatic. You weren't going to automatically be able to take PrEP. Get it? Whether you go to the doctor and ask for a prescription or not. You have to be accepted into the program for PrEP, and then you have to conform to say that you agree to reduce your risk level, that you're going to use a condom every time, that you're going to eat healthy, that you're going to exercise, and in addition take PrEP. My concern and several people's concern about that is I could do those things that you're doing right now to stay negative. Those are all the things that you have to continue to do, and then you take PrEP. So if I don't take PrEP, I'm doing all of that.
Right.
I don't understand the study.
I can sort of, I know exactly what you're going with that.
Okay, because and it was also brought out that PrEP has some side effects. Another thing that you can't, if you have liver problems or some areas of that it has some side effects in that area. So I think, and the question I think we were here at the town hall is how is this going to affect the African American community? I think all of that is because we don't normally go to the doctor anyway. So we hear about PrEP in the news and say, oh, as you were saying, this is the great cure, we can go out and get that, and we haven't educated ourselves on what exactly PrEP is. And because we are high risk for a lot of health disparities, it may affect us in our healthy aspects differently than it may affect other individuals that are not predisposed to already having high incidence of disparities in different areas. For instance, not just hepatitis, but if you have hepatitis B or C, and those affect different other organs of your body, those are some of my concerns. And then my other concern is the cost, and how are you going to pay for it, and how is that part of based on how you become involved in PrEP? You have those other criteria, but is it a criteria that you can pay for the medication if you have insurance or you have some other means of paying for it? And if you meet all the other criteria but you cannot pay for it, then are you excluded? And those are questions we have to ask, and that, in my opinion, that's what we have to put together if we're going to go forward with some recommendations as how this affects us and what we do, not just with PrEP, but with all other preventive medications that's coming up, and that's moving forward. And I'll get into that more, but I'm not here as a medical doctor or any of that. I'm just here as an advocate that I see a lot of things that we're doing, especially, for instance, this room. The majority, I would say that everybody sitting here is sitting here because they have a high concern for this. But it's impacting our community. This room should be running over. Even though this is a sexual issue, it's not sexy. You know what I'm saying? It's not sexy where everybody gets excited and, oh yeah, I'm going down there. Girl, you going down there? Yeah, I'm going down there. Nobody is interested in, oh, you going down to talk about what? Oh yeah, well, yeah, my cousin got it, but So we have to figure out a way to excite our community in a way that to let them know how it's affecting them. And I think that's one of the things that NBLCA is trying to do with these town hall meetings to develop a strategy. So,
Well, we're going to ask Ruben if you would just quickly do a summary to her response, and then we're going to move to Bernice's presentation and then take more questions and answers.
So, I mean, it's a very there's a lot of issues that you brought up with your questions, so I'm going to try to address some of them. Number one, it sounds contradictory when you say, PrEP is not 100% effective, so you have to counsel people on using condoms, and you have to counsel people on how to protect themselves. And if people end up doing that anyway, then what do you need PrEP for? So it's a valid question, but I think the data comes from clinical trials where people that were taking Truvada and the people that were taking placebo, they were all being counseled on using condoms, on how to use them. They were given free condoms. And that just shows you that human behavior a lot of the time doesn't lead to doing what you're supposed to be doing. So by having the medication on board when someone happened to have unprotected sex, they ended up preventing that infection from happening when the other things were not being used. On the other hand, there's all the legalities around this. Nobody's going to tell you when a medication is not 100% effective, just take these and take 2 aspirins and call me in the morning. Nobody's going to tell you that. Basically, what they're going to tell you is this can help in conjunction with the rest. The other part of the question about the side effects, obviously, all medications have side effects, and that has to be taken into consideration. The sort of like good news about it is that, the medication that is being used for PrEP is the same medication that people with HIV have been using for more than 10 years. So we have a lot of long-term efficacy and data on how may affect people when it comes to side effects. So that's a good thing, as opposed to being something new that we don't know how it affects the body of someone, how it affects the different organs in the body. When it comes to who's going to pay for it, there's different ways of answering that question, because it will depend on what an insurance company decides to do, whether they want to cover PrEP or not. And there's examples around the country of, like, for example, Kaiser Permanente in California. They have been covering PrEP even before it was approved. So it will depend. But the good news for someone that wants PrEP or needs PrEP, or in collaboration with their provider, they decide that, well, maybe PrEP is right for me. Gilead has an assistance program that provides the medication for free to someone that is not going to be able to get it through their insurance company, or because they don't have insurance. So it's somewhat similar to the program that we have for people that are living with HIV, but this is for people that need the medication for PrEP. So it's free of charge, and obviously, as usual, you have to qualify and you have to complete, forms and things like that. But they can get it for free.
Thank you, Ruben. We're going to have a commercial now. I'm going to put in a shameless plug for the Johnson C. Smith Theological Seminary, which is hosting its first annual HIV/AIDS conference. The theme is creating HIV/AIDS competent churches and church leaders. The brochures are out in the foyer. And this is in response to Johnson C. Smith is the Presbyterian seminary here at ITC. 2 years ago in Minneapolis, our General Assembly approved a report called Becoming HIV/AIDS Competent Churches, Compassionate Action and Prophetic Witness. And so we've decided to sort of walk that talk. We will be hosting our first annual conference and then moving on to a full certificate program where persons will learn around the areas of biblical and theological foundations, HIV/AIDS education, advocacy, asset mapping, and pastoral care, so that those people in our community will have strength from a spiritual perspective. I put that plug in there now before we go back to Bernice, because it's so integral in our community that the church become more engaged. And that's why it was important for us to come here to the seminary setting, where we are training people to go out into the community, because they need that knowledge, because they're going to have persons in their congregations, in their communities. And as the executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Foundation, they're going to witness to folks who are in communities of faith around this issue. And it's important for us as people of color to have, and people of non-color, to have that particular information so that we can strengthen it. But we have to be very, very clear. Our 2009 surveillance report reported that the 30314 zip code, where you're now sitting, had the 4th highest incidence of HIV and AIDS in the state of Georgia. So there's no coincidence that we are now taking up this, because we see these people in our community right here. So we want to thank you, Ruben, for your wonderful presentation. And Ruben will continue to be here until he has to leave. But we're now going to ask Bernice to share with us, as she has planned to do so according to the guidelines. Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to apologize for running a little late. I could not find this, and I think I drove up and down Martin Luther King maybe 15, 20 minutes. But I was coming from Tuskegee. So I had to get through the traffic, and then I had to find this. So I apologize for that. Secondly, I want to apologize to you because I'm not going to do a formal technical kind of presentation to you. That's not what I do. And let me tell you a little bit about our program. And actually, I'm the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Foundation. And we launched a program in 2008 entitled Silence is Sinful, HIV/AIDS Initiative, and it was directed at getting churches to become more involved. And we have a training as well in which we train Silence is Sinful champions. We look for churches to identify individuals in that church that will come to the training, and then we ask those individuals to go back into their congregations and neighborhoods and then push for testing. We partner with them to try to establish free testing at different events. We ask them to do educational distribution, ask the pastor to pick a Sunday that is dedicated to HIV/AIDS prevention and to tie it to the religious outlook as best they can. And we're at this time, we're partnering and working with the NBLCA, who just put out a workbook for African American churches, pastors and laymen to work with in pushing this forward. So I feel that I am here on the panel to try to raise some awareness or to address some issues that are not just the medical technical part of medication and how it ties into treatment is prevention. And I sit through a lot of the seminars just like the doctor presented, and I don't know about you, I don't know how to pronounce all the names of all the medications, so I just say meds. And I don't try to repeat them because I cannot pronounce each and every one of them.
That's good enough.
But I think that I can talk to the issues that concern many of us. And one of my main issues is, for instance, this room and how we can begin to fill this room up with people. And we know among ourselves, we know why the room is not filled. We know why people still have some stigmatization toward it, that they don't want to come out and be involved in it. But those of us sitting in this room also understand the devastation that it's having on our community, on our children, within our churches. And I did a seminar in Charlotte, South Carolina, about a couple of months ago. Is Charlotte in South Carolina, North Carolina? North Carolina. And we had 250 pastors in the room, which was phenomenal. And many of them, I would say a third of them were female. And many of the female pastors in the room were HIV positive. And they became HIV positive through various ways. But the interesting thing was many of them, when they went to their pastor at that time, the pastor either, well, one young lady said the pastor stopped speaking to her for a year. She would come into church and volunteer to do things, and he would act like she was not there. He would not speak to her at all. After a year, and the fact that she continued to go on and do what she was doing, he came to her and apologized and said, I didn't speak to you because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to tell you. I didn't know how to relate to you because my perception of HIV always came from, well, it must be a gay man thing. And first it was a gay white man thing, and then it was a gay black man thing, but it wasn't never a regular, in his words, a regular black person's thing. So when you came in and said you had HIV, I had to think, well, I mean, were you out sleeping with a whole bunch of people? What's wrong with you? So he didn't know how to relate to her. And she had obtained it from her husband, who had an affair, and then she caught it. And then another young lady whose father was the pastor, and her husband was the assistant pastor, who went out, had an affair. She was infected with HIV/AIDS, went to her father. Her father told her she was now ashamed of the church and she had better not tell anybody that she was infected. So those are the types of mental things that we have to deal with still in our communities. We don't look at this. Nobody ever, if someone comes up to you and say, oh, I went to the doctor today, he told me that I had sugar, honey. That's what we say in the South. I got sugar diabetes. No one asked her, well, what were you doing? How'd you get that? What kind of thing you doing in your life now that, but they don't ask you that. No. They don't ask you that. If you say you have a heart disease, they don't ask you, how did you get a heart disease? But they will ask you about, how did you get HIV/AIDS? And if you're working in the field, and I've been working in this field doing this almost 15 years now more, they assume that you must have HIV, or your mama, or your sister, or your brother. Why are you doing that? You know somebody, or do you have it? Why do I even get those kinds of questions? Why aren't we just coming together as a community to address this issue that is killing us? Because we can continue the way we are and die silently, or we can come together. If we don't come together and push together, we're not a threat or a factor. You have the national, from the White House, the national HIV/AIDS strategy, in which we're not prominent, even though we're one of the largest growing groups of infection, men having sex with men and heterosexual, the black community. But we're not prominent in that strategy. Why? Because we don't have a voice. Because we're scared to go in the room and sit down. A few of us do, but they, that's just them loud Negroes over there. They don't have no force behind them. Because we can't even fill up a room. There's something wrong with that, people, don't you think? Don't you think something is wrong with it? So how can we address the PrEP issue? We have to understand and have doctors to come and explain to us what the side effects may or may not do. Is it good for us? How do we go out and get approved to take it? We had in the luncheon, and I think my good friend Reggie was in this preliminary luncheon with me when the doctor from Australia was there and spoke about a young man who had HIV/AIDS. Then he had a bone marrow transplant, and he no longer has HIV/AIDS. And he's the only person in the world that they know living in that aspect. And they're trying to figure out exactly how and why. They know, but they're not quite sure. And the person that gave him the blood marrow transfusion is a person that's prone to reject. It's not easy to get HIV/AIDS, and so they're doing that study to figure out how that's working. We need to know about those types of things, and we need them to break it down into regular language that we understand. So when they're talking to us, they're not talking to us as if we're in a study, scientific study lab, and I know all those terms. I think that when we come out of here, from the questions, because the questions I understand is that we're supposed to be talking about the major impacts, the challenges, and the opportunities, and how we move forward as a community, and that they're going to go around to 7 other cities, and they're going to combine what we come out of here with. So I think it's fine that we have these presentations on the facts, but I think we need to come out of here with some type of direction or solutions that we've come up with, because HIV/AIDS is an equal opportunity offender. It doesn't care about your race, your creed, your sexual orientation, how much money you have. It is like a thief in the night. Now, how many people have had somebody steal something from you? Let me see. Broke in your house, somebody stole something from you? Okay, did they make an appointment with you? Say, I'll be there next week to take your stuff. See, that's how a thief do. He show up anytime. He's not gonna, and that's how HIV/AIDS is. They're not gonna say, listen, next week when you go to that party and you meet Sam, that's when I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you at that party when you show up. Or I'm gonna get you with the deacon, you know, because that's what you're supposed to do. It's proper. You go to the church and you meet the right man and you date that one person, and then you get engaged, and then you get married, and then you may get HIV. And you say, why me? Because I did everything I was supposed to do. So we have to address about how we, as young women and as young men, go about our sexual activities and learn how to protect ourselves in spite of ourselves. Yeah. We want equal opportunity. As women, we're now leaders and directors and presidents of companies and executives, and we fly over all 4 parts of the country, and we've acquired a lot of habits that are most of the time left to those type of environments. And by that I mean you may have Jesus on the East Coast, and you may have Manuel down in Texas, and you got Joe over there in Ohio, and you got Sam that you visit when you travel around. But see, if you're doing that and everybody thinks that they're the only one, the problem that you're having is that you are playing Russian roulette with yourself. You think you're empowered because you do that, and you're not empowering yourself. You're exposing yourself to something that is out there and negative. And that's the kind of thinking that we have to change. And we have to start it in the church. A lot of people think that the church is not influential anymore. I've had some conversation with people say, well, the black church, man, nobody goes to church anymore. It's not influential.
Preach.
Okay.
Mom.
But that's not true. You know it's not true. And we have to have our pastors to come on board. And we have to have our conservative pastors come on board. And I don't know exactly how we're going to reach out to them, but we've got to come up with some way that we bring them on board. And this is what I say. If every woman that goes to church on Sunday morning stay home for 2 Sundays, and they don't send in their tithes and offering,
Help us, Lord.
I bet you on the 3rd Sunday, pastor will have a special message. And all that week, he'd be going around visiting, trying to figure out what's going on. Because women are the crust of the black church. If we don't go, and if we don't tithe, men don't go, and men don't tithe. And even if, I know my grandmother and grandfather, you know, we had to go to church every Sunday, but my grandfather didn't go to church. And every time we get ready to go, he said, Anna Mae, pray for me now. Y'all pray for me when y'all go to church. So a lot of times the men are not in the church, but the women are. The women take care of the pastor and the pastor's aide. They make sure he's got a nice car or whatever he needs for his family. Mercy. That's what they do. They do the fundraisers. They fry the chicken and the fish on the weekends. So if we don't start taking care of those women, you're not going to have a church. So what about that?
Yeah, I do think that's an awesome point, but I want to push back just a little bit, because I think that not only women are very, very important in the black church in its makeup, but I also think that we negate to look at the prominent role that black gay men play in the black church, which has been glossed over in many ways, is hidden in plain view, that the gay man on the organ, which sends this creative energy through the place, gets ignored, and in many ways is the villain in sermons after women. So I'm with you in that. I just think...
going right there. I was going there with you,
okay,
my brother.
cool.
I was going right there. And you're exactly right, because I call it the don't tell, don't ask, don't tell of the black church. You don't ask me, I'm not going to tell you, but we all know it's there. You know, we try to act like that brother's not there, and he just has a cold, and his mama said he got pneumonia. So as long as you don't say anything, we won't address anything, and that's the issue of us continuing to die. With our young men in the churches, we don't embrace them, let them know that we love and care about them, and we fall back on the doctrine. And I'm not here to try to dictate to anybody any doctrine at all. I have my personal beliefs, and I'm sure you have yours. That's not the issue. The issue is we're dying. So we should be able to put our differences aside, like Governor Christie and the president did these last couple of days, put their differences aside, because the issue was the people that were affected by the storm. And this is our storm. So we need to put our issues aside and address that. And like I said, I'm not really here to do the technical medical presentation to you, but I do think that we have to address those issues and really need to look into PrEP and find out exactly what it is and how it's affecting us, and not look at it as this new miracle drug that we don't have to worry about anything, pop a couple of PrEP, and you can keep on doing whatever you want to do. That's not right, and that's not the crust of what that is.
You know, Bernice, I just wanted to share that for so long, I think that in the community, we've relied upon the scientists and the medical teams to lead us with this. And so your presence from the community and the work that you're doing is important, because we're never going to reach an end to the epidemic unless everyone plays a vital role. The church, the community, every leader, every person, every individual has a level of accountability personally, but then all of these institutions that we talk about, they all must be at the table. So it's very important, and we don't need to. We've got Ruben and all of those other people who've gone, they like school, so they want to learn how to say all those words. We have them here. But I think it's important that we have community folks to really be engaged around this particular process. We're going to be
Let me say one more thing real quickly. The elephant in the room is that African Americans do not succumb very easily to research. Right. We don't want to take part in research and we always remember the syphilis study in Tuskegee, and we feel like we are experimented with by this government all the time. So we don't easily walk in to say, okay, I'm going to be a part of this study, and half of the group I know is going to get the medication, the other half is going to not get the medication. We need to address that, and I think the best way to do that is you need to educate the community advocates who understand what the study is that we want to be involved in and have confidence and belief in it, and then they can take it to the community, because we're not going to just automatically become a part of a study.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Vanessa.
Hi. Bernice, thank you very much for what you have expressed this evening. And I understand where you're coming from and have been an advocate in many of the areas that you're addressing, particularly with the church. One of the things that has been a driving force for me, I am an alumni of ITC, and in fact, I was the first person to speak on World AIDS Day who was HIV positive in 2004 here on ITC campus. We also, by 2007, did an HIV summit that Dr. Battle pushed the buttons because of the conversation we had had, and knowing that there was a need for the Black community, our churches, to be aware, to be in the know, and to be able to feel comfortable about talking about HIV and AIDS in the church. But still, the conversation with our churches is saying we don't have enough theologically based information to preach it, to teach it, to bring people to an awareness of sexuality, conversation of sexuality in our churches. It pushed me. And I went to Africa where HIV and AIDS began. And in my studies over the past 2.5 years, was able to surface the pioneers over in Africa who actually were the driving force, which ended up being people in the church to help turn things around. And you're absolutely right. If the church, if the Black community, if our Black churches do not get on board, and even President Obama has expressed this, that we will not turn this around and we will not accomplish the goal that is spoken on the HIV strategy of being a zero infection country by the year 2015. It was the theological institutions, it was the Anglican Church, it was theological churches as well as universities that used the Bible, that used conversation, the Word of God, to turn things around. When the government didn't know what to do, they turned to the church. And the church rose to the occasion. 99% of the church body came on board, and we were able to pray. They were able to pray and change the atmosphere. And it is going to take that kind of power from our Black community, just like in the Civil Rights era, to turn that factor around in the same vein. And you see how quickly things changed once we all came together in unity to fight the fight. And if you paid attention over the past month, October, the voice of the people concerned about cancer research, they were all over the country. It was a unified front everywhere, because you saw pink everywhere. Delta Airlines on board wearing pink. Anywhere you went, churches showing their symbol. That is the kind of voice that has to come out boldly, strongly, united on the same front, not caring about whether you're homosexual, heterosexual, because it's a health disparity that we are addressing. And once we go back to the basics of love your neighbor as yourself, and we put ourselves in the other person's shoe, how would you want to be treated if you were in that situation? Then and only then will we be filling places like this that really should have been filled 8 years ago, at least. And it should be overflowing. We have to make the impact that was made when we fought the fight for the civil rights movement.
Have to move it from the alley of shame and blame and put it on the boulevard of human rights and the civil rights that we have to deal with.
So we want to thank Dr. Ruben Gamunde and Bernice Frazier. Will you join me in thanking them with a round of applause? And I just want to make one correction to my dear sister. It should have been 30 plus years ago, not just 8 years ago.